Good morning, everybody. I put everybody on mute here, so if you have a question, you can type in the chat or unmute yourself here. Okay. Hi. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see my screen over here. I'm Meredith, and the Executive Director of the Special Needs Trust Foundation. I'm going to just do a little introduction here, and then I will let our resident expert take it away. So over here, this is our website, SNTF-SD.org. After the meeting, which is being recorded, we will post the recording on the website. So if anybody wants to direct anybody to the website to watch the meeting or review anything, then you can certainly do that. Just a little bit of background about us. We were founded in 1989 with a group of parents who wanted to make a better life for their children after they have passed away. And then we were born. We are a cooperative project of 12 nonprofit board member agencies, and they are listed all here. Okay. We administer two pooled special needs trusts, a first party and a third party. First party is what's known as a self-settled trust, and a third party is parents like yourself who have the wherewithal, who want to set up funds for their child after they pass away and they cannot take the money themselves, or they'll lose their public benefits. They can join the trust. We administer, anybody can join our trust throughout San Diego or even throughout California on a case-by-case basis. So we'll look at the whole state of California, and we currently administer trusts. We have just under $30 million in assets under our control. You all, as I mentioned, should be able to type questions that I will see. And as we go along here, Dennis will ask if there are any questions that if you'd like to ask. So just a little bit about the presenter today is Dennis McRoberts, who we're so thankful is able to do this. He worked for Social Security Administration, and his presentation will cover the application and approval process and various work incentive programs available. Are we going ahead? No.
Hello, thank you for coming to our meeting today. I'm Dennis McRoberts. I worked for Social Security from 1975 until 2008 when I retired. And then over the years, I wound up helping people or giving presentations like this. I interviewed people in the office. I was a mentor to new hires. So I've done a little bit of everything as far as interviewing people and things of that nature.
Damn it. Now you have to come here.
So what we're going to start here is, let's look at the first slide where it says 2 disability programs.
This one?
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, so it's very important that you keep these 2 programs separated in your minds, meaning on the left, Social Security disability is considered, as it says there, an earned benefit, and you must work and pay into Social Security, but also you can have, they're called auxiliary benefits or dependent benefits, when a spouse or a child can also collect some money. If a child or a spouse collects any Social Security, it does not reduce the worker's payment. So let's say the workers do $2,000 a month and they have a spouse and a child. The spouse and the child may get, let's say, $1,000. It does not come off of the wage earner's check. So the main thing is you have to work and pay in, with the exception again of a spouse or a child, or if the child becomes disabled prior to age 22, the disabled child is allowed to collect on the parent's work record. That type of application is called disabled adult child. And in order to get disabled adult child benefits, you have to, the wage earner needs to either be retired and collecting benefits, collecting Social Security disability benefits, or if they're deceased, then the survivors can collect. Now, the one on the right, SSI, Supplemental Security Income, it's a federal welfare program and needs-based. And as many of you know, you must have low income and assets to qualify, paid from the general taxes, not Social Security. That's why when you're looking at these applications, you'll see that the questions are quite a bit different from Social Security and from SSI. And California, in our case here, supplements the federal benefit. The floor federal benefit is the same throughout all 50 states. It's what, about $914. And then California pays a few extra $100. And you're also allowed to file for food stamps. Now, one of the things that I realized when I was working is that people would call in with a question, but they're not sure whether the question applies to Social Security disability and or SSI. You can collect one, the other, or both. For example, we had a man call into the office and he says, I get Social Security disability and I've got a very part-time job and I'm earning $500 a month. Will it affect my check? The answer is no, it will not affect your check, but Social Security needs to know about the monthly wages. The problem was he asked the wrong question, so he got the wrong answer. He actually got SSI disability, and it can affect the check. So if you're asking a question and you're not sure what program it is, make it very clear that you are not sure which one it applies, so you can get a more complete and more accurate answer. So SSI has three broad categories. SSI is disabled from birth to 64 years and 11 months. SSI aged, 65 years and up, and SSI blind, any age. Now the blind pays a little bit of extra money and they get a little better benefits in various computations. So you can apply at any time for any of these. Let's say someone's getting SSI disability and then something happens and they wind up becoming legally blind or having some other vision problem. Well, you can sign up for SSI blind benefits. So there's no time limit on that. So now the other one, as I mentioned briefly a moment ago, is disabled adult child benefits. If an adult disabled before age 22 may be eligible for child's benefits if a parent is deceased or starts receiving retirement or disability benefits. So Social Security consider this a quote unquote child's benefit because it's paid on the parent's Social Security earnings record, also known as the parent's work record. An adult child must not have substantial earnings. All that means is that they're depending on the parent's work record and the adult child's disability or disabilities. An adult child already receiving SSI benefits or disability benefits on his or own record should still check to see if the benefits may be higher on a parent's earnings record. Higher benefits may be payable and entitlement to Medicare might be possible. So it's one of these things where if you're not sure, you should file an application, because the worst thing that can happen is they'll say you're not eligible. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it is right now. And if the disabled child has a change in circumstances later on in life, they should refile for benefits. Another advantage to disabled adult child benefits is after 2 years of eligibility, the child becomes, disabled adult child becomes eligible for Medicare, just like a person age 65. And so that can be an advantage depending on the doctors and or places where the person might receive medical care. So the disability definition is the same for both programs. Inability to work is key for adults over age 18. The standard is quite a bit different. Inability to function is key for children, is they look at what a typical child would be able to do. And so you might have someone who gets is in a family that has low income, they're getting SSI disability, then they attain age 18. At age 18, everyone gets what is called a continuing disability review, a CDR, to see if they're still eligible for benefits. And so these are standard, the continuing disability. And so everybody has a review, no matter what kind of disability they have. And so, for example, I met a lady that a young lady, had turned age 18 and she was deaf, but she had very good hearing aids and she could lip read. And so in any event, they stopped her disability because she was able to act and perform like a fully hearing adult, even though that person had a very good hearing aid. So something like that can occur that you're not necessarily expecting. So disability, if it's from your own work, must be severe enough to keep adult from doing any substantial work. The amount of earnings considered substantial increases each year. In 2024, this means working and earning more than $1,550 a month. That is gross wages before any deductions. Now, with the $20 or more a minimum wage, this can become a potentially a big problem. So we'll get into that a little bit later. This also brings in the concept of, it's called work incentives or work subsidies, meaning this, let's say someone is earning $2,000 a month. On the face of it, it appears that they're automatically exceeding the $1,550 amount. Well, that's not necessarily the case if they're in some sort of a special work program, or let's say they're moving carts around at Walmart or helping bag at a grocery store, things like that. Well, the grocery store or the Walmart or anything, or Home Depot for that matter, will potentially be giving the disabled worker a subsidy. The subsidy, for example, could be more breaks, let them come in late, let them leave early. So this reduces the true value of the work. This is extremely important if someone is doing their best effort, but they still are earning a little over the $1,550. The disability must be expected to last 12 months or result in death. So, for example, you have a young person, let's say gets hit by a car, and they have a broken back and a broken leg. Well, a young person, excuse me, might be disabled for a year, year and a half, 2 years. Then they have a medical re-exam and they might be ceased. Now, if someone who's 55 or 60 has the same disability, the same accident, then it's entirely possible they'll never work again, because as you know, bones take a long time to heal when you get older. So it depends on the age and the circumstance. Now, here are the 5 steps for disability. Are you working? This dovetails with what we just talked about a moment ago, in that, or you could be working in a subsidized situation. You could be a bookkeeper, but they're letting you work 4 hours a week or something of that nature. So you're getting the subsidy. Is your condition severe? That is considered whether it's mental and or physical. We're back to the can you earn $1,550 or more in competitive employment. is your condition in a list of disabling impairments. There's in the publications, Social Security has some very good publications. And further on in the presentation, we will show you where these publications are. And one of them is called the Blue Book, and that has a list of all disabling impairments. Doctors will occasionally use that as well, so you can get an idea. But if it's not there, it does not mean that you're not going to be eligible, because everybody can have some sort of unusual disability that Social Security is supposed to try and figure out if it meets the requirement. Can you do the work you did previously? Yes. Let's say you're operating a bulldozer. You've been doing that for 30 years, and your insides are done from bouncing. Well, you may be eligible because you, excuse me, you may be eligible because you can't do that work and you're in your mid to late 50s and that's all you've done. So in order to file for benefits, there's actually two different rules for Social Security disability and SSI. So when you go into the local office, you can go in there, ask for an appointment. The reason that's important is that starts the clock for Social Security disability, the earned benefit, and SSI disability, the needs-based benefit. When you contact the Social Security office and you're filing for Social Security disability, you have 6 months to actually file the application. I urge you, don't wait. If you think you're disabled, make the appointment and start working on all the paperwork. SSI, since it's needs-based, has a 60-day limit. And excuse me. The logic is, since it's needs-based, you must need it immediately. And if you don't file, then you must not have needed it. So that's the logic for that. And they will send out forms for you to complete. Now, there are a fair number of forms that we're going to go over that later on in the presentation. Now, a lot of people think that there's all these forms are there to discourage the people from filing, and that, believe it or not, is not the case. The reason the forms have expanded over the years is the disability groups, lawsuits, and things like that. They wanted the disabled person to give more information. Excuse me again. So be very thorough. For example, there's a work activity report, and you need to be thorough in that. There's a daily living activity report. I suggest people work on that over a several-day period because they get used to doing something and they don't realize it's unusual. Let's say you have to tell the disabled person to take a shower every day. Well, you get used to that. But it's very important in a work situation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then if Social Security sends any paperwork out, start working on it as soon as you can. So again, it can take maybe a few days just so that you're thorough, but it's well worth your effort. And if you don't respond, they'll deny you. So you can be denied even though you're disabled because you didn't fill out the forms. One of the other things that's very important is to make sure that all the medical evidence is sent in to Social Security. I saw in a disability report by a private company that about 30% of all the denials on initial claims are because the doctor, hospital, school, or whoever did not send in the information. So we're gonna cover that as well later. So you have to babysit this, but it's well worth your effort. So when you call in for an appointment, you will have a Social Security caseworker and/or an SSI caseworker, and appeals and representative payee paperwork are handled by the Social Security office. Now, what happens when you file an application is you can fill out the medical form online, and when you submit it, it automatically goes to the mailing address zip code. So you can look that up to find out what office it's being sent to. Then what happens is the Social Security caseworker or SSI sends the medical folder to the DDS, the Disability Determination Service. They make the medical decision. So this, as you can imagine, trying to figure out if someone's disabled can be very, very subjective and difficult. So trying to make a subjective decision as objective, all applicants truly believe they're disabled, and that's largely true, but you have to be able to meet the legal definition. Does anyone have any questions or anything of that nature, or repeat on definitions? Please let me know, because if you're not sure about it, there's probably other folks that don't know about it. Here we go.
Here's one.
Here's one. My adult disabled child has Medi-Cal. Would the eligibility for Medicare after 2 years, after eligible for SSD affect this? She will need Medi-Cal to pay for caregivers. Usually it does not. What happens is that after 2 years, when the Medicare starts, Medicare becomes the primary insurer. And then Medi-Cal becomes the supplemental insurance. So you'd have Medicare, Medi-Cal. The slang, if you will, is called Medi-Medi. So that's usually a pretty good health coverage for the disabled child or disabled adult, for that matter. Now, generally, it takes 4 to 6 months to get the first decision. If you can ensure that the more the medical records are coming in, you might be able to get it done a little more quickly. The same for any paperwork that is sent. Again, it's called a daily living questionnaire, a work questionnaire, things of that nature. So if you don't get them in timely, you could be denied or something else. You don't want to be denied, especially just because you didn't get a form in. Now, when you file for SSI, there's a 1 month waiting period for everybody. So if you call into Social Security on either June 1, for example, or June 30, June becomes the waiting month for the SSI applicant. So that would mean that the person's potentially payable from July on. Again, why you don't want to put off filing for benefits. Again, the worst thing that can happen is they can say, no, you're filing too early. You need to wait another 3 months, and then you can file. So a denial is not necessarily a bad thing. It might be just telling you your timing is a bit off. Now, with Social Security disability, the earned benefit, the benefits begin with the 6th full month of your disability. Everybody has a waiting period, and the payment can be retroactive, meaning this: let's say you file in June of 2024, and you're not approved until June of 2025. Well, you can get roughly 6 months of retroactive of money. So or even if you had to go to a hearing and you have a couple of years, you can get all that retro money from the Social Security disability, and you can get it from SSI as well. Now, if you file for SSI, they're supposed to ask you about citizenship, marital status, living arrangements, income, and resources when you start out. Let's say it takes 8 months to be approved for SSI. You have it's called a pre-effectuation review to see what has happened from the month that you filed up to the current. That helps SSI pay you in a timely fashion and correctly, hopefully. You have 60 days to file an appeal after receiving the denial letter. If you don't understand the denial letter, please check with the office, or you could call me, or if you're not sure what it is. The main thing is to read the letter very carefully, because at the end, if there are appeal rights, it will not only tell you that you have appeal rights, it will tell you what kind of form to file. So if you file an application, an initial application when your child turns age 18 and they're denied for some reason, then the next step is you file a reconsideration. And you want to do that within 60 days. Now, there is an exception. It's called good cause for late filing of an appeal. What that means is, let's say the disabled person winds up in the hospital. So the 60 days lapses. Well, you can file a late reconsideration and you write a statement why you're late, and you would turn in proof that the disabled person was in the hospital or whatever happened. And then they likely will process the reconsideration. So beware of that good cause for late filing of an appeal. Same with a hearing. And so if you're late for filing a hearing, the same thing applies. Good cause for late filing. So many times you have to wind up at the hearing because you're not sure they're not sure how long the disability's gonna last or how severe it is. And many times, by having a year or two to look it up, it will become evident that the person is disabled or perhaps not disabled. But that in some cases that can help ultimately get you approved for benefits. Now, when you file a hearing, you have to have an attorney. And there are plenty of Social Security disability attorneys. And so you want to interview a couple of them, see what you think. And then, as you can see here, they package the case so that the judge and the attorney can zip through this, looking at the legalese of the person's disability. So you have to pay the attorney. To pay the attorney, it's 25% of the retroactive check up to $7,200. And so let's say the retroactive check is $35,000. Well, you would pay $7,200, and that's it. So a lot of people think this is unfair, but this is the way the program has evolved over the years.
Okay, we have 3 questions here.
Okay.
You want to answer them?
Yes, we're going to do some questions. Let's see, this is what we talked to Frank.
This is 6 months.
I think is there a way you can scroll up to see that?
Here we go. Okay, that's the first one.
Yeah.
Here we go.
My husband will start getting SSI in 1 year. he will receive a higher benefit than I do. I started receiving SSI in May. Should I or could I wait to file for my adult disabled child so she can get more money? A very good question, as all of them are. First of all, your husband is getting Social Security, either retirement or disability. This is what we talked about briefly in the beginning. So he's actually getting Social Security, and it sounds like, excuse me, you're going to be getting Social Security as well. Again, Social Security is the earned benefit, and SSI is the needs-based. So when there's a potential child involved, that means that they're going to be receiving disabled adult child benefits from either one or both of the parents. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say the lower income wage earner starts getting disability, then the child gets the lower amount. And then when the higher income wage earner starts receiving, it can be switched to the higher amount of Social Security. The other is one of the SSI rules is that SSI is considered income of last resort, meaning if you have any kind of other money you're able to file for, you are required to do so. So that means you have, if you start getting Social Security retirement, you have to file for your disabled child. Then let's see. Okay, let's see. My disabled brother receives SSDI and SSI. He turns 65 in next March. Will he be eligible for additional SSI benefits under SSI aged benefits? Unfortunately, that is not the case. The only way he could get a little bit extra will be to become legally blind or completely blind. As it turns out, SSI disability for adults and SSI aged for adults, the payment amounts are the same. Make sure that he's getting or has filed for food stamps. That's a recent change in California in the last several years. That might help him a bit. If a disability is not as debilitating at the time of applying for SSDI, Social Security disability, the earned benefit, but then gets worse as a result of side effects, and the application is denied, would it be better to file an appeal instead of a new application, even though the person was denied because of the initial diagnosis? That's a good question as well. I would urge you to file an appeal. It'll help speed things along. So make sure you file within 60 days. And the form, there's a medical form that you filed with a reconsideration called an SSA -3441 BK. And one of the questions says, do you have some other condition? So there's a yes. And that's why I would do the reconsideration. Our son is 23 and is disabled. Oh, excuse me.
6 months, the sign up start from the month the parent starts getting SSI.
Does the 6 month waiting period is for when there's no 6 month waiting period for SSI. There is for Social Security disability, and that'll be calculated automatically. And the office will also contact you to file for disabled adult child, as for the reason I mentioned a moment ago, is the child is potentially due other money, so they're required by law to file for it. If they don't, the SSI will be suspended or terminated. Oh, let's see. Our son is, that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our son is 23 and is disabled. He receives SSI. When I start collecting Social Security next year, can we apply for SSDI? In other words, can our son receive both SSI and SSDI? Yes, that is correct. So, for example, let's say his Social Security disabled adult child benefit is $1,000 a month, and he's right now receiving about $1,150, then he would get $1,000 from Social Security, and in round numbers, another $150 from SSI. So yes, and the retirement application actually has a question that says, do you have a child that was disabled prior to age 22? That is what Social Security calls a lead question. And so, yes, we do have a child, then they will automatically, within the next month, take an application. Now, if the child's been on SSI for a while, they may do, before they start paying the Social Security, a medical review called a CDR, Continuing Disability Review. Everybody gets a medical review. Excuse me again. So let's say someone has an intellectual disability, a very low IQ. They've been getting the checks for 7 years. Well, even though unfortunately the disability isn't going away, they still have to do the review. Part of the reason is that they want program integrity to make sure, if nothing else, the person's still alive. And so it's people get very worked up and think it's an insult. But again, it's mainly for program integrity. So they don't get the checks and move somewhere out of the country, for example.
Okay, that's it for questions.
Okay, very good. So here we have some numbers you all might find interesting. For every 100 claims processed, 40 are allowed and 60 are denied. Now, I know it doesn't seem like that when you talk to your friends and relatives, but I think largely the 40 that are allowed, a good portion of them, people have some really awful disabilities, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, some awful brain tumors and things of that nature. But then also the 60 are denied, a part of that is because the Disability Determination Service did not get all the medical records. So again, we'll talk about that again. For every 25 claims processed for reconsiderations, 4 are allowed, 21 are denied. And then hearings, for every 19 claims processed, 12 are allowed and 7 are denied. Now, partly this again is due to having a longitudinal history. As one of the questions a few minutes ago asked, should we file a new claim? Or since this new problem has showed up, should we file a reconsideration or a hearing? So as the person's ages, things many times get worse, which is one of the reasons why their hearings are approved. Now, appeals counsel. What that means is you can file if you're denied at the hearing, and what the appeals counsel does is they look to see if the judge followed the law. They don't look if you're disabled. They want to see, did the judge follow the law? And then an appeals counsel can take 4 years. So it's deadly slow. So then after that, you can file a claim in federal court. I saw only one claim in my entire work history where someone went to federal court and they were approved at federal court. But most of the time, people will start a new initial claim. So, but you can do anything you like. So here we have blind benefits. Your vision cannot be corrected to better than 2200 in your better eye, or your visual field is 20 degrees or less, even with corrective lenses. So I don't know if many of you know this, but you can be legally blind and drive in California. So what happens is they give you a license for, let's say, a 4-mile radius of your house, and you're not supposed to drive on the freeway, something like that. So the idea, of course, is to enable you to get to the grocery store or go to the doctor. So you don't presume that someone is lying because they drive. It's just a lot of people don't know that, and it's a little unexpected. So in order to be eligible for Social Security disability, the earned benefit, you have to earn work credits. They used to call them quarters of coverage. So right now in 2024, if you earn $6,920 or more, you have 4 credits. Now that's the minimum, but you have the credits. And so it's very important to have these credits. The more you pay in, the more you get out. So it's a sliding scale. So if you were only earning $7,000 a year, you would have a pretty small Social Security disability check. Better than nothing, but you would be very low. So as you can see, it's a sliding scale. You have to have work in 5 out of the last 10 years. If you're under 31, fewer credits are needed. So let's say you have someone, a young man that is out surfing and winds up breaking their neck and is a quadriplegic. So if they're only like 22, 21, if they have 6 credits, they're going to be eligible for Social Security disability. So it many times pays to work not over the table, not under the table. Now, SSI, the rules, it's set by law. The point of SSI is to provide the disabled person cash for food and shelter. In California, this living arrangement, 1182.94, is independent living with adequate cooking and food storage facilities, or meals are provided as part of your living arrangement. So that's that payment rate. If you cannot pay that, or there's some other reason, you will get, in round numbers, a $300 reduction, because it's, thank you. It's presumed you don't need all the money because you're getting a subsidy from a friend or relative. That's the logic. Medi-Cal, if you're eligible for SSI, whether it's $1 or all of it, you automatically get Medi-Cal. If you're living in a licensed board and care, the check's up to about $1,500 in round numbers, of which about $150 is used for food and shelter bills. So the payment rates can vary depending on your living arrangement. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Here we have a question. Can you tell me what the personal asset cutoff level for my disabled adult child to qualify for any benefits? For SSI, it's a $2,000 asset limit. For Medi-Cal, they took away the asset limit. What Medi-Cal looks at now is income, not assets. So there used to, as I say, used to be a $2,000 limit. That's no longer the case. For Medi-Cal, disabled adult child, there is no asset limit. So if you don't need Medi-Cal, it makes no difference. So $2,000 if the child is 18 or up. So for 2024, the federal benefit is $943. This is a floor throughout all 50 states. As you can see here, California pays an extra $239.94. The jargon is this is a state supplement. You will see this on SSI letters. It's more of an accounting thing, but it's important you understand why it's there. So the grand total is $1182.94. That's independent living with adequate cooking and food storage facilities. We can move on. So what happens is, let's say a child has income, let's say some sort of an annuity. Let's say the annuity is $1,100. Well, the child will get an extra $102 from SSI. I will explain why it's that. It's called a $20 general exclusion on other income. We'll cover that in a further in on the presentation today. So you can have other money coming in. It can be multiple sources. You can have a VA benefit, a Social Security benefit, and SSI, for example. So then, for children, if they're under 18 and live with the parents, the parental income and assets are used in calculating whether or not the child is eligible for payment. So it's entirely possible that the child may be very disabled, but because of the parent's income and or assets, the child is not payable. On the other hand, if the child is living in an institution or some other a place that is not under the parental control, the child can file on their own through the parents certainly, but the parents' income and assets do not count. So if a child under 18 or over 18 has to be below $2,000 at the end of each month, or $3,000 per couple. The resources are computed at the first moment of the first day of each month. And so you've got to watch the balances at the first of the month. In fact, one of the things when you're getting SSI can be a huge problem is early deposit of the SSI check. If the first falls on a weekend or a holiday, it is paid early. SSI has tried to automate calculating whether or not the person is over the $2,000 limit. With early deposit of check, it can appear you're over the limit, but you're really not. The workers at SSI are supposed to take this into account. They don't. So you have to babysit it. I urge you, if you have early deposit, to yank the money out before the end of the month, because it's going to give a false look that you're exceeding the $2,000 limit. For example, let's say you have $1,200 in the account for emergencies, and then on the 30th of the month, the 1184 comes in. Well, it looks like you're over the limit to the computer. This is a big problem. I have one person whose family, they've got about a $15,000 overpayment. So it's a real problem that you have to monitor. Also, you must be a US citizen or a legally admitted alien. The legally admitted aliens. That's been greatly restricted since 1996. But parolees, asylees, and refugees, if they're considered a certain class of that type of immigrant, they're automatically allowed to file for all these benefits. So here's an example of some of the resources. Some non-counted items are if the child owns a house or lives in the house and is part owner, the house is excluded no matter what its value. Standard household items, a TV, a computer, your furniture, things like that, that is all excluded. One car is excluded no matter what its value. If, as long as the car runs and is used to take the disabled person to the doctor or run other important errands. Also, certain types of burial insurance and plots are not counted. So if you were going to prepay a burial, I would urge you to check with the funeral provider to set it up so none of it is considered a resource that would be counted towards the $2,000 limit. Be very careful about that. Life insurance. If you have life insurance for your disabled person, make sure you buy term insurance. The reason is term has no cash value. So you could have a $100,000 policy, a term policy, but since it does not accrue a cash value, it has no effect on the $2,000 limit. Now, if you have a whole life policy, when it's accruing a cash value, you need to monitor that. And what you can do, for example, if you can't convert it to term, then pull the money out. And for example, you could put it in an able account or spend it on something the disabled person needs. Let's say they need special eyeglasses or a new bed or dental work, something of that nature. So watch the life insurance. Also, since we're talking about assets, what's happened recently with some people I've been helping is when the child was born, they've been given a cash gift, such as savings bonds or some other financial instrument. And because it's a modest amount of money, the family puts it in the safe deposit box and forgets about it. 18 years later, they file for SSI, and then SSI runs all kinds of internal revenue checks, and then SSI discovers the forgotten savings bonds. And this has created as much as a $20,000 overpayment. So make sure that you think about these things. Tell your friends, relatives, and certainly the child may not be disabled at birth. But think about this and use the money for the child's needs so you don't have this accidental giant overpayment. And they're hard to get waived, meaning that the overpayment going away. So please be aware of that. So any questions? Okay.
Please explain about the burial plot.
Many years ago,
Business.
Oh, wait.
Personal asset. Did we answer that one?
yes, well, let's just make sure it's Carl's question is it's $2,000. An able account is excluded. Life insurance, as we just went over, is excluded. A car that's in the disabled person's name is excluded as long as he or she does not have to be able to drive, as long as the car is being used to assist the disabled person. Now, concerning the burial plot, that can be considered an asset. And so, as I said a moment ago, the funeral providers are very familiar with this, and they will set up the plot so that it is not considered a resource. For a while, they considered it almost like an investment. This is probably 25 years ago. Nobody buys a burial plot as an investment. So they finally made these rules, fixed these rules so that someone can provide for the future. in case the person dies.
So
Can
as
we-
far as the copy of the slides, I'm happy to email it. We're going to post this recording on the website. If you email me offline, you can email admin, ADMIN, at SNTF-SD.org. Then I can email a copy of the slide presentation. Okay. I think that's
Is that it for now?
yes. Do
Okay.
So it's 11. Do you want to take a break now?
Let's go. If all of you that are watching don't mind, let's push on for another 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Then all of you, please feel free to jot down questions if there's some, get more questions, or if there's something that you'd like me to discuss again. So this ABLE account, an ABLE account stands for Achieve a Better Life Experience. This is extremely handy for Medi-Cal and SSI. And the person has to be disabled prior to age 26 in order to set up an ABLE account. And so the maximum contribution is $18,000 a year. That's the fourth bullet point down. Right now, the maximum is 100,000 in ABLE, but it hasn't been, the ABLE accounts haven't been around quite that long. But for the maximum contribution, 18,000, that can be contributed to the disabled child by virtually anyone, whether it's a parent, grandparent. If I'm a friend of your family and I want to throw $500 in there, I can do that. By going directly into the ABLE account, this does not count as income to the child. This is considered excluded income, but it has to go directly into the ABLE account. If you handed the money to the disabled adult child or to the parent who's the payee, then it would be considered income as a cash gift. Very important concept. So directly into the ABLE account. Then the next bullet, disabled person and others can contribute money to the account, pay back to the state when the beneficiary dies. That can potentially go to Medi-Cal. So what I've been suggesting to people is to not let it, keep it at a modest amount of money, because you can contribute throughout the year. So if the disabled person unfortunately passes away, certainly you're going to lose some money, but you're not going to get cleaned out for the Medi-Cal. And why would you use this? A very good question. And that's because you're allowed to use this money for living expenses. So there's a concept called sharing the household bills. That's one of the ways that you can get the higher amount, the $1,182. So if you're short, you can use money from the ABLE account so that you can make your fair share, and it does not reduce the disabled person's check. It's enormously helpful for living arrangements and an SSI in order to get the highest amount payable for the disabled person. All these rules for the ABLE account, if you use Google, type in, this is what I'm going to give you is what is called a POMS reference. POMS, that stands for Program Operations Manual System. That's where all the rules for SSI and Social Security are. And the ABLE account is clearly explained in the following section. And I'm going to give it to you, or I'd like you to type it in this way, and typically Google, it'll come right up to you. It's S as in Sam, I as in important, space 01130.740. The name of this section is Achieving a Better Life Experience ABLE account. This explains contributions to the ABLE account and withdrawals. You have to document all contributions and all withdrawals. They want to make sure that when the money is withdrawn, it is used for the proper thing. These are called qualified disability expenses, QDEs. So you can review all that. At this section, if you have trouble finding it, call me and I'll help you walk through it. So now we have 3 ways a child can get disability. Social Security as a child under age 18 on the account of a parent. Disability is not an issue. If the disability is an issue, you can file 6 months for disabled child benefits prior to attaining age 18. But if the child is not disabled, you can get dependence benefits if the child is under 18 and attending school, or is up to age 19 if they're a full-time student working for a high school diploma. So you have retired or disabled for the parent, or if the wage earner is deceased and they paid into Social Security, then the child can get survivor benefits, whether they're disabled or not, up to age 18. A child can get, excuse me, disabled child benefits and SSI, depending on the parental income. So what time?
11:02.
Okay.
Do you want to take a question?
Yes, we have a question. Let's take a question.
This is.
In a pair roll.
Let me make sure there's nothing. Can you please type your email in the chat? Okay, yes, I will do that.
You mean me or you?
No, I think mine.
Oh, okay.
And maybe yours too, we could do both, but, all right, I'll work on that. You can answer this next question here.
I think you can, but I don't have that section memorized. So if you like, you can contact me and we can go over together this POM section about that. Oh, there it is. So let me give you my my email is Dennis DENNIS _MCROBERTS at yahoo.com. I have where I live, the cell service isn't so hot, so our landline is 760-230-2758. My cell is 760-519-2536. If I miss your call, please leave a message. If it's important or I don't call you for a few days, please feel free to call me back in case I somehow missed it.
Did you answer that question about able?
I couldn't fully answer it. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Okay.
I don't have that part of it memorized. I apologize.
Okay, contact information. I think that's it for questions. Okay, on to this. Do you want to push on for
Yeah,
another 10 minutes?
Yeah, let's push on a little longer.
Okay.
So we have 3 kinds of income. Earned income, we're going to give the computations to this as well. Unearned income and in-kind support and maintenance. Earned income is either wages, getting a paycheck, or including working for cash for that matter. Earned income or unearned. Earned income is getting a paycheck or net earnings from self-employment. Everything else is unearned. And so that will help guide you on what computation you're looking at if you're trying to sort this out. In-kind support and maintenance, all that means is that you are helping the disabled person with food and or shelter bills. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a disabled child and I'm a friend of the family, and I say, I'm gonna move your child to the Ritz-Carlton up in Orange County. The value of the food and shelter at the Ritz-Carlton's probably $25,000 a month in a modest room. That's the value. But since I'm paying the Ritz-Carlton directly, you only lose about $310 from your SSI, because I'm paying the provider of the food and shelter directly. If I handed the disabled person the $25,000, it's in unearned income. So it's a wacky example, but I hope it illustrates the point. So here we have earned income. So someone is earning $100 a month before taxes. So after let me give you the example where the person does not have any other income besides the earned income and the SSI. Let's use $100. You take the $100, there's a $20 general exclusion that is written into the law. That's where that dollar amount comes from. So now we're down to 80. Then we have the $65 work exclusion. Now we're down to 15. Then the rule says divide by 2. So out of $100, in our example here, the person's SSI check is only reduced by $7.50. So the idea, this is considered a work incentive to encourage people to attempt to work if they want to or are able to. Unearned income, cash gifts, inheritances, gift cards, annuities, workman's comp, pensions, alimony, dividends, prizes, veterans benefits, unemployment, Social Security, disability, such as disabled adult child. Now here's where the $20 comes in. If a person gets disabled adult child benefits, the $20 exclusion comes off of that first. And then if they're working, then we have in our same example, $100 subtract 65, 65, that brings it down to 35, divide by 2, so the person's SSI check is reduced by $17.50 in this example, where you have disabled adult child, wages, and the or wages, SSDI, and SSI. Is there any questions? In-kind support and maintenance, ISM, food and shelter paid by another. Reduces the SSI benefits dollar for dollar up to a maximum of $334.33. So as you can see in my example a few minutes ago, $25,000 obviously greatly exceeds this, but this is the formula that they wrote into the law. When SSI started in 1974, they were trying to use market value. Well, you can see how much of a headache that turned into, so they quickly sorted it out this way. There's no reduction on the state supplement, as you can see. It's only on the federal amount. So why don't we take a break here, and then we'll get into the sharing the household bills. And this is also where we can add in the money from the ABLE account so that you can see how this works in order to meet a sharing computation in order to get the disabled person the highest amount legally available. So let's take about a 10-minute break from here, and then we'll
Zoom at 11:20.
And we'll come back at it 11:20, and then we'll, any questions that occur to you, and then we'll launch in to the sharing and these computations.
Okay, there we are back.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. Now we're going to discuss our living arrangements. And in this particular situation, it's called sharing the household bills. There's a couple of ways that SSI looks at a disabled child living with the parents or friends for that matter. But let's do parents and the child is over age 18. In order to get the higher amount of money, the 1,180 or so, you have to be able to pay your fair share of the household bills. For example, and these are the only household bills that are counted. You could have a lot more, but this is all they count. The mortgage, property taxes, food up until September, or after September, that goes away. Gas and electric, gas, heating oil, electric, water, sewer, and trash. The reason they have these minimal amount of expenses is it's the minimum you need in order to live indoors. As you can see, it doesn't have cable or satellite TV or other things you might need or want because they're not necessarily not necessary to live indoors. So let's say the mortgage, the property taxes, and gas and electric, water, sewer, and trash. Let's say there's 4 people in the household, so each person's fair share is $1,000 a month. Well, the problem is that the check is only $1,180 or so. So you don't have enough money for food and you don't have enough money for incidentals. This is where the ABLE account is. You can take money from the ABLE account, let's say $500. So you could take $500 from the ABLE account, $500 from the disabled person's SSI, and you're paying your fair share of the household bills. So you get the $1,180 rather than that $300 reduction. Now, there's another way some people like to do it. It's a room rental and a private home. This gets a little tricky because the rule that SSI has is if you're sharing, if you're renting a room from your parent or if you're renting a room from your child, SSI has to look to see if you are paying market value. How do you define market value? You define it as what would you charge a non-relative? So let's say I'm disabled and I'm renting from my child and they're charging me $700 a month. The SSI rep is allowed to say, and they have forms for it. So what would you charge a non-relative? So if my child says, well, I'm charging Dennis 700, but I would charge anybody else 1,200, I'm getting a $500 subsidy. And that subsidy would not be counted as 500, it would be counted at the $300 range, 1/3 of the SSI federal payment rate. The other question they're allowed to ask is, well, would you evict Dennis if he didn't pay? And one of the reasons they ask that is because, is it a true business arrangement? A true business arrangement is my child would evict me. And so it's a way to tell if someone's actually telling the truth and that sort of thing. Now, one of the offices are also doing, which as far as I can determine, is not correct. They'll go say, well, in Rancho Bernardo, a room rental is $1,350 a month. The Palms says, take the homeowner's allegation. But again, they're allowed to ask, would you evict your child or your father, that kind of thing. So it's best if you can just to do the sharing. Then you don't get into all that other unpleasant stuff. Now, one other thing is if the mortgage is paid off, the only thing that SSI looks at are property taxes, gas and electric, water, sewer, and trash. Of course, any person would keep insurance, but it's not necessary. That's why SSI doesn't count it after the home is paid off.
Do you want to see?
Yeah.
No questions.
The 1/3 reduction, this is a lot of hair splitting, but it is important. The value of the reduction is, let's say I'm living with my family and they say Dennis doesn't have to pay any rent and pay anything for food or shelter. Then I would get, in round numbers, 1/3 of that $940 reduction. Now, the presumed maximum value is if I'm paying a portion, it's the VTR plus $20. It's not really worth going into the who, where, and why, but it's a $20 difference. But ultimately, it means the check's going down to a maximum of about 315 or so. Now here's SSI benefits are not reduced if someone pays directly for the disabled person's medical care, or they hire a nurse or someone to watch them, home repairs or maintenance. In other words, you can let your house fall down, but it doesn't really affect the SSI. It seems silly, but that's really what it boils down to. Telephone, cable, education, job, vocational, entertainment, vacation, clothing, and personal items, as it says in the asterisk, a few examples. And the reason it's not counted are two. One is it's not food or shelter, because we have the shelter bills that are counted, we just went over with. And as long as you don't give the money directly to the disabled person, it's not counted, because the disabled person has no access to the cash. Two essential questions when paying expenses for the SSI recipient. Who are you paying? If you're paying the beneficiary, a limit of $20, that's the $20 exclusion we just went over with a few minutes ago. You do not, and you can't give beneficiaries debit cards or gift cards because they act just like cash. It's okay to pay expenses directly, pay the credit card company, or reimburse others. If you're paying for food and shelter items, it can be reduced by up to 1/3 of the federal benefit rate. So again, it all revolves around food and shelter and not giving the disabled person the cash, no matter what you are paying for. So here's an example of just the $20 general exclusion and unearned income. So the disabled person, whether it's disabled adult child or their own disability, let's say it's $500 a month. Then what happens is we take that $20 general exclusion. Again, this is written into the law. That's where the $20 comes from. And this has been the same amount since SSI started in January of 1974. So now we have $480 of countable unearned income. The maximum California SSI payment, including the state supplement, is $1182.94. Subtract the 480, the SSI payment is $702.94. So then we can tell what the total benefit is SSI 702.94 plus the 500. So you're actually getting an extra $20. So the two checks together would add up to $1,202.94. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do just wages. I think this will help give you a very good flavor of how this all works. So in our case here, the disabled person only has wages and SSI. So we have the $20 general exclusion since it wasn't used on anything else, and the $65. So now we're down to $415. The rule says divide by 2. So out of the 500 wages, only $207.50 are countable earned income. So we take the 1182.94, subtract the countable earned income. So the SSI payment is $975.44. And so we have the person's income is $975.44 of SSI plus the gross wages equals $1475.44. Now, just as a point of interest, if the disabled person, due to the higher minimum wages, their check can actually go to 0, but they keep all the benefits. So if your check goes to 0 due to earned income, you still keep all other benefits. You're just not getting a check. So now we have representative payee. Who needs one? That is someone that helps the disabled person manage money. Who needs one? Children, drug addicts, alcoholics, adults who are incompetent, not just incapable. This is where it's very important if the disabled person is eligible for a conservatorship. When you're filing for benefits, or if you're already getting them and a conservatorship happens, make sure that SSI and/or Social Security knows about the conservatorship. The conservatorship can make an enormous difference. For example, I had a client some years ago that had disabled identical twins, and they had the identical disabilities. And so they filed for benefits at the same time for both sons. And one son was approved and one son was denied. Why was that? Well, somehow the denied child, the worker that reviewed that case, somehow missed or didn't notice that there was a conservatorship. And so when they filed the reconsideration, they said, oh, by the way, this child's conserved as well. They were approved. So make sure, this is one of the things we're going to get into very shortly, about making sure all the information is in the file to get a correct decision the first time out. Hopefully at the initial application. Now, who should be the payee? The custodian of the person, social service agency, family members, and private payee service. So for family members, Social Security discovered that adult parents do not steal from their adult children. The reverse is not true. So they really monitor how the money is used for the disabled person. Typically, a father or a mother is best, and then other family members. A social service agency like the county, if there's no one available, the person has no family members that are available. A private payee service. Is the organizer still around? Okay, the organizer is an example of a private payee service, and these people are typically used because the disabled person does not have the insight to have a family member be the payee. Meaning, when I say the insight, is they give the family member a hard time about giving me all my money, quote unquote. And so you can have World War III break out on where the money is going. So the family can't put up with that. So the other private payee service, sometimes a motivator for the disabled person is it costs like $60 or $70 a month to have a private payee service. And that's right out the window. So that might get a disabled person to cooperate with the family and work with the family to give them extra money. Another is occasionally they'll threaten to attack somebody. So occasionally the private payee people will meet someone in front of a drugstore or the Vons or something, because they usually don't misbehave in public because they know they're going to jail. So a family member's best. If you're desperate, use the payee service because you can only do so much. Now here we have Medicare and Medi-Cal. Medicare is a federal program through Social Security, the earned benefit for people on Social Security. Entitlement begins at age 65 or after 2 years after the disability checks start. There is a monthly premium that changes each year. That is for Part B and D. Part B is for the doctor and clinics. Part D is the drug. You want both of them. Effective 2006 is the Part D. Now, Medi-Cal is a state program known as Medicaid elsewhere. In California, entitlement begins when SSI claim is approved. Some states require a separate application. If the claimant is eligible for both Medicare and Medi-Cal, then the Medicare premium is paid by Medi-Cal. For example, the Medicare premium in round numbers is $180 a month. For a person that doesn't have Medi-Cal, that comes out of their check every month. It is automatically taken out. Also, for higher income people, that Part B can go up to $500 a month. If your modified adjusted gross income, your MAGI, M-A-G-I, is over a certain amount. Let's say 300,000 or 400,000. I don't have the amounts memorized. One of the things they count in this modified adjusted gross income is non-taxable income. So it really is taxable. So if you have investments that you don't pay taxes on, Medicare counts it. If you sell an investment property, and let's say you clear $650,000, you're going to have an elevated Medicare premium for 1 year of this high, and that amount over $500 a month, because of even though it's essentially a windfall, because people when they get older, they'll sell their property because they need/want the cash. So be aware of that. There's a pretty good publication on this information in the SSI publications. So how do you figure out what kind of program to select? Well, California has a free program called HICAP, Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy Program. As you can see on the screen, there's the phone. You can send them an email, and they're pretty good at assisting people and selecting this. Certainly, if you have the money or interest, you could also contact a private health insurance advisor. They also do a pretty good job as well in selecting what would be the best plan for you. Do we have any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
We're good.
The POMS is where all the regulations and rules are used by Social Security to process Social Security, retirement, disability survivor, SSI, disabled, blind, and old age. And so the easiest way to see the POMS is to type into Google SSA POMS, just as it is spelled. The first selection you'll see has a little icon that shows us from Social Security. And it's broken out into very broad categories: retirement, disability, SSI, and then there's a very large number of subchapters. I don't tell you that to put you off, just so that you'll know you might have to wade through a lot of information, and if you needed it, I could help guide you as to where to look to help speed things up. For example, if you're looking at SSI, they have it as application process, income, resources. And you'll notice in the and a few others that there's no living arrangements. So where do you look up living arrangements? The living arrangements are in income. And the section where living arrangements start are at SI space 00835.000. That's the introduction to living arrangements, and you truly have to start at the beginning because they have about over 40 definitions that you need to know as to what SSI is driving at or telling you in order to figure out what to do. So that's where the living arrangements are. Okay, SSA home. Okay. So here we have, if you're at ssa.gov, you scroll all the way to the bottom, and on the first, the support is, I believe, in bold black, and then below that, there's a section that says forms that you can click on. And this will show you all the forms, and then we're going to go over them in just a moment. Also, it has publications. So you could click on publications, you're looking at other things. And if you click on the publications, the next screen that comes up, there's a green band that goes across. It's about 2/3 at the top. And in white lettering, a little to the right, it says topics. You click on topics, you get a drop-down box, and it has SSI, disability, retirement, general information. There's about 160 publications. But anyway, that's where those are as well. Excuse me. They finally, in the last 6 months, put the SSI application on. Don't ask me why they didn't do it for the last 30 years, but they didn't. Finally, they did. The SSI 8000 VK is the paper version of the online application that the worker will go through with you. Now, the questions are not necessarily in the same order, but they're all there. Don't be put off by, this is about a 25-page form. At least 4 pages cover SSI, legally admitted aliens, parolees, asylees, refugees. It covers all that. But for many of the folks that are listening in here, that's not an issue. Excuse me, because they're either US born or they're naturalized citizens. So that will save you about 4 pages. Another 4 are roughly our living arrangements. Most of the living arrangements are 3 for most SSI people, or 4 of them. You have independent living with adequate cooking and food storage facilities. You have a room rental in a private home, whether or not the landlord is your parent or your child. You have licensed board and care living arrangements. And then you have the homeless. Even though that's not technically a living arrangement, a person can still get SSI if they're homeless. Hopefully the SSI will have them move in doors, but that's what's on the 8000. Okay. The next,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, this is okay. We'll finish the
Okay.
bottom. let's just finish quickly these bottom two. The 3369, if a person has had more than one job, this needs to be completed. It is a paper form. It is not online. If the disabled person wants someone to help them, the SSA 1696 needs to be filled out because of the privacy laws and the problem with identity theft. You have to use one of these 1696. It does not take away any rights of the disabled person if they're concerned about that. The SSA 11 is if I want to be somebody's payee, they ask you any income and do you have any felonies? So that's the main thrust of that. We can move on. When filing the initial application, the paper form is the SSA 3368 BK Adult Disability Report. I urge everybody to use this paper version as a guide to when they're typing this in on the line. It's really helpful and it keeps you from being timed out. The only thing that needs to be exact on the adult disability report are doctors, hospitals, schools, jail, anything, names, addresses, and phones. All that needs to be exact so that the disability agency can get the information. Then the next, then you can use that as a guide to type it in yourself. A lot of the 3368 is ask the same question: who's the doctor, who's the hospital, who's the doctor, who's the hospital. So don't be put off by the size of this. The function report, that is what happens to the disabled person throughout the day. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning, take a couple of days to to complete this. For example, the disabled person has no awareness for traffic. Now you're so used to this, you may not write it down, but you can't let the person out of the house. They may wander into the street. I went to Camp Pendleton to help a family, and the young man had two things. He was always trying to escape, and he was always trying to take everybody's water. Very unusual. So I'm talking to the parents. All of a sudden, the father leaps out of the chair. Where's Ronnie? He tears through the house, out the front door. He's wandering around. This is very important for proving disability. If the child is age 18, use 3368. Under 18, use the 3820. The 3881, they have various numbers for the 3375 is function report child birth to 1 year. Then they have another breakout and another breakout. So you just select the one that suits your child's age.
You have a question.
Okay. Our son is an adult and was in a group home. He has since moved into our house, and we need to change the payee from the regional center to us. Is the 11 the only form we need? SSA may not know. We have conservatorship. So what I would do is I would call your local office. It's done by zip code. If you have difficulty figuring that out, I will help you. You tell them the child has moved home and you submit a copy of the conservatorship. Now, you can only have one payee, even though in many cases, both parents are on the conservatorship. The reason is if there's some sort of potential misuse of the money, you can't say, oh, Dennis misused the money. He went to Barona and blew it. And I say, no. Melissa took the money and blew it somewhere else. So you can only have one person accountable. That's the logic. If they won't give you an appointment, walk in and they'll, you may have to go back again, but you still need to start the process as soon as possible. Now with the SSA 827, that is a one-page medical release. On the right top, it asks for the disabled person's name, social security number, I believe date of birth. And then even if the disabled person is conserved, Social Security wants that person to sign an 827 anyway. So this disabled person will sign it the best they can. They can only sign with an X. Excuse me. Then you need a witness. At the bottom, there's a witness, section. So then the person would sign that they witness the disabled person make the X. That's the only time you need a witness. Now, if the disabled person is conserved, then you have one of the conservators sign it. The one I suggest, the one that's willing and able to be the payee. So you would turn in 2 827s. If it's unclear as to whether the disabled person needs a representative payee, the agency sends the SSA 787 to the doctor. And so you send in a new 827 if you have to file an appeal for the reconsideration. If you have usually conserved people are approved at the first time. If you have to file a 3441 for a reconsideration or hearing, excuse me, the SSA 561 is for the reconsideration. The 789 is the appeal for a disability cessation. So you don't need to worry. Most of you don't need to worry about that now. If you need to file a hearing, it's a 501, the 3441, and the 827s. Now, when you're filing an application, wait 2 weeks, whether it's the initial claim or the reconsideration. Call the DDS, that's the Disability Determination Service, the state agency that makes the medical determination, and tell them if they can't get any information, they're to call you immediately so that you can help them get that medical information. The SSA 561, this is used in most reconsiderations, including an initial application, or let's say there's an overpayment due to excess resources, or let's say you're getting the lower SSI amount and you think the disabled person is due the higher living arrangement amount. You file a reconsideration. Now, what I've noticed is some of the offices at the initial application do not ask about living arrangements, and they they automatically put you in the lower amount. They're not supposed to do that. But they do it. And so you need to read your award letter closely. The 789, that's if you're getting SSI and they cease you. You're allowed to appeal that way. The HA 501 is the hearing for the administrative law judge, a one-page form. And you really have to get an attorney if you have to file a hearing. For medical, most attorneys do not do non-medical hearings. The attorneys are only typically trained in Social Security disability. Do we have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Most offices want you to call for an appointment. Call between 7 and 7, Monday through Friday, 1-800-772-1213. If you're calling in for someone else, the person that answers the phone will grill you a little bit about why the disabled person is not calling in. It's not meant to give you a hard time. They're trying to make sure that we don't have an identity theft problem. It all revolves largely around that. And so just be very clear what's going on. The person's unable or unwilling to do it. Mainly unable is typically correct. Your local office is determined by your mailing address zip code. For a child attaining age 18, apply in the month in which the child is attaining 18. This ensures that you will not lose any money. If they have an in-office appointment, if there's any way possible, bring the disabled person who is the claimant, the representative payee, and/or parents. Very helpful, especially in the beginning when you're learning the ropes of this stuff, is if you have two parents, to have two people listening, because it's so much minutia, as you can see, it helps you remember, or have one of you jot down notes or something of that nature. So for SSI disability, the non-medical they look at marital status, citizenship, living arrangements, income, and resources. If the child lives with the parents, then they need, under age 18, then they need the parental income and resources. So you have a low-income family, they can get X amount of dollars, as low as $1 up to about $800 for the disabled child. And one of the draws to this is that you, even if you're getting $1 for the child, makes you eligible for in-home supportive services, which can be an enormous help. And then the resources of the parents have to be low if the child's under age 18 and living at home. Then they need the disability information, that is doctors and hospitals, names, addresses, and phones. Dates can be approximate. You go nuts trying to find dates. So summer of 2021 is fine, things like that. And then, as we said earlier, you want to work with the analyst that has your case so that all the disability information is in file. The average wait times are 4 to 6 months. You can occasionally speed this up by, again, making sure the disability information is turned in to the analyst. Also, since you know these forms are coming, everybody gets a daily activity report, so you could work on one in the beginning of the application. Then when you get one in the mail, you could either use the one you've already completed or complete the one that they have, and it'll help you get it in more quickly. Same with the work. If someone's had multiple jobs, if they've had subsidies, extremely important that they have a job coach. They have special assistants. Let's say one of the supervisors has to remind someone how to do something. That's fine. Extremely important for the ability to do work in competitive employment. Let's see the appeals. If you're not sure, file an appeal, especially if the letter says it, if you're not sure what's going on. So that way, if you find out, oh, I don't need to file an appeal, the information was correct, all you have to do is withdraw the appeal. So it's nothing is harmed, and you can potentially save yourself or get yourself more money later. And you have to be able to prove your position. So you may need bank statements. Excuse me. You may need bank statements, checkbook registers, things like that. And I'll explain a little more of that in a minute here. So there are 8 branch offices. If you don't like your office based on your mailing address, zip code, you might want to think about getting a P.O. box in the zip code of the office you want to work with. Just a consideration. All the offices use the same computer. Whether you're in Florida or Maine, it's all the same computer. In California here, it goes from here to computers in San Francisco, and then to Baltimore, then back and forth. If you feel you're getting a runaround, try and ask for a supervisor. One of the unfortunate things I've noticed is they're having difficulty retaining employees, especially here, because the pay, even at the highest scale, you can't hardly live here. The job I had when I retired now pays, in round numbers, 100,000. You cannot live as a single person in California by yourself on 100,000. That would be a GS 11 step 10. So what happens is you might get somebody that's less qualified. Or what I have noticed, even including when I was working, if someone doesn't know the answer, they'll get nasty with you. Instead of saying, I don't know the answer, I'll go ask somebody, or I'll look it up. So if they're nasty, it's a telltale sign they haven't a clue, or they're not willing to look it up. Sorry to tell you that, but that's the way it's been working, unfortunately. Most of the people at DDS are usually quite helpful and pleasant. This is a list of all the offices. They're all open 9 to 4, Monday through Friday. If you can avoid going in on a Monday, that's a really good thing. They're usually very busy on Mondays. If it's a 3-day weekend, try and avoid going in on Tuesday. Again, can be very busy. But of course, if you have an emergency, just go in, but you be prepared for a 3-hour sit or something like that. Now, one of the unfortunate things about Chula Vista is the line starts at Chula Vista at 6 a.m. So if you don't want to wait, you got to get there before 6. And it's that way. My understanding is every day. And so my understanding for example, Oceanside the line starts around 8-ish. But it can still get big fast. So try and adjust allow yourself enough time to be able to wait. They're not trying to bust you. It's just they don't have enough, they're not willing to hire enough people. And things, as you can see from what we've gone through, can get very, very complicated quickly. So just be patient. If you don't want to get there early, you might go in at 12 or 1, even though that's towards the end of lunch and things like that. You may not have to wait quite as much because the morning rush is typically done. But you don't want to get there at 10 minutes to 4. If you have a complicated case, that they may have to send you home and tell you to come back. Because the goal, of course, is to pay you correctly and timely. And if they don't have the information, they can't do it. And they want to try and pay everybody timely and correctly. Now, these are various work programs, employment programs, the work incentives. I'm going to go over some of that. I have time. Yeah, we still have a little bit of time. Just contact, as you can see, if a plan to achieve self-support. But the biggest thing that I'm going to go over that is not here is substantial. We went over this in the beginning, substantial gainful activity. And since the minimum wage has gone up to 20 an hour, you can easily exceed the 1550. So there's a form called an SSA 821 BK. That's in the publications. And Social Security and SSI will send them out to ask about your work. Around page 6 of the 821, it asks if you have any assistance at work. This is so important because let's say someone's earning $2,000 a month. It appears they're over the 1550. But if they have a job coach, if let's say they have the supervisor due to their disability, excuse me, has to assist them every day, telling them what to do or when to take a break or allowing them to take a break, whatever's going on, that reduces the value of the work. So even though it looks like they're earning $2,000, the true value of the work might be $1,300 or less. So that can keep you from getting seized. I have a couple of the parents are from another country. Their son was born here. Their eyes glass over when they're reading these letters. They're simply too difficult. And so what happened is the office ceased them and they did not appeal timely. So 2 things happened. His Social Security disability stopped and his money stopped and he has a $4,500 overpayment. So you have to try and avoid this by giving a realistic assessment of how well the child or adult is doing. Many or some of the people at Regional Center, and I mean this in 100% positive, they are cheerleaders to try and help these people. They'll write, oh, they do a great job. Their money ceased. You have to take into account their disability. So the other is that a form is sent to the employer, an SSA 3033. This asks the employer, does the person receive a subsidy? Now, this particular, one other case that I worked on was working
for Home Depot. And Home Depot didn't want to fill it out because thought they would get sued for criticizing the disabled man's work abilities. Well, that's not the case at all. We want to see what his true abilities are. So make sure the employer knows that. Make sure if this is happening, the employer gets one. The person that was seized, that they didn't understand, the letter, they didn't even send SSA 33 to the Home Depot. So he was really disadvantaged. So another babysitting, but just keep this in mind. As far as resources go, SSI has tried to automate calculating the $2,000 balance. This is calculated at the first moment of the first day of each month. If you have early deposit of check, that could artificially increase the value. For example, let's say you have $1,000 in the bank account. The check comes in on the 30th. The SSI computer says, oh, you've got $2,180 in your account at the beginning of the month. That's not correct. The early deposit is supposed to be excluded from, so the regulations state the workers are supposed to look to see if there was early deposit. They don't do that. And so what I urge people to do now is take the money out immediately. So it doesn't show. I've got a person who's got about 15,000 in overpayment because of early deposit of check. And the office is unwilling to do the calculation that's required by the bonds. We did the calculation and they wouldn't look at it. So really watch early deposit of check. Another big problem potentially is someone's living in a board and care. They pay let's say the board and care operator wants to be paid on the 23rd. They wait two weeks to cash the check. Well, it looks like they're over the resource limit because the check wasn't cashed. So what I tell people to do is to buy a money order, pay them on the 23rd. They can cash it 4 months later. It makes no difference. The office again is supposed to look at the checkbook register. They won't do it. So make sure you watch out for that. Oh, save all medical records. Schools are destroying them after 5 to 7 years. You have to save this stuff. Because many times a longitudinal history will prove someone's disability. So whether you do it in paper or a thumb drive, save it. Make sure your paychecks, if the child is working, get sent into SSI. They'll send you a great big overpayment letter. And then they'll say, you didn't send in wages timely. Well, if they put them in timely, you get a letter. So if you're not getting the letter, you'll know that you have a good chance to appeal it because you sent it in and it wasn't recorded.
question.
Oh. If my son, what is I don't know what the door program is. Set up with his school and will be starting a part-time job with a job coach. What concerns do I need to be about this time? He will only be working a few hours a week, mostly for attaining other skills outside. Oh, Department of Rehab. Thank you very much. So SSI counts the money when it is paid. So get an estimate as to when the first check is and how often they are paid. If they're paid monthly on the 30th, for example, or if they're paid the 15th and the 30th, or if they're paid every 2 weeks. The reason that's important is you always have 3 pay periods twice a year. And ultimately, that can be important. SSI uses the gross wages. So what I would do is when you find out when the paychecks come, I would send either fax in or send a letter. If you send a letter, I urge people to send them registered mail, return receipt. I know it's expensive, but you can say, I sent this letter in on the 20th of June that my son's paychecks are coming the 1st and the 15th. So that way they can set it up timely so that your son's check is reduced. If okay, well, when he starts that, you will also tell them when you have him file for SSI. He's in a special program. The Department of Rehab, job coach, you make sure they know all that, so you get a correct determination. It is likely these rules will be the same in 2 years or very similar. If you're a low income family, you might look into having him file now. Also, Social Security needs to know if he's working as well. If he needs to file when you or his father or his mother file for retirement, disability, or they pass away. If I already said this, I'll say it one more time. Make sure if the child has gotten a check, gifts at birth, savings bonds, try to remember that, because I've had a number of people that were given savings bonds at birth. 18 years later, they're worth $5,000, and the whole family has forgotten about it. And then you have a $10,000 overpayment because the assets exceed the $2,000. So try and remember that. If your child is, as this for a question a moment ago, is 16, find them and cash them in and use them for the child. Because one of the questions is, in the last 3 years, have you sold, transferred, disposed of, or given away any money or property? And they can see the savings bonds. So you would say, yes, we're going to apply. We know we took the money out and we spent it for his dental care, and he needed a new bed or special clothes or whatever. Just spend money, save receipts, don't give money.
Can you explain the working disabled? I was told that my daughter could recycle cans each month and make as low as $5 and get paid cash. That could count. They said there was no minimum she could make. Is that true?
Partially. The problem becomes the only way that we could count the recycling is to as wages is she would have to file a self-employment tax return. Otherwise, because it's not wages, she's not working for someone and they're paying her $10 an hour to collect cans. This would be considered unearned income generally. So if she earns over $20 a month, that's going to start reducing her check. So let's say she earns, just for sake of example, $20 a month. Well, they need to know that. They probably even want to see the receipts from the recycler. Because they all give you receipts.
Mhm.
And so they would want that monthly, more likely than not. If it's $30 a month, what happens is we have the $30. And again, it's considered unearned income in this situation. We subtract the 20. So then we have $10 is countable unearned income for SSI purposes. So her check would go down by $10. One other thing is that if let's say she earned the $30 in June, it affects the August check. That's why they try to get people to report this stuff early in the month in order to try and get the person paid correctly 2 months later. But they don't have enough people to do it. So that's what would likely happen. It can't be counted as wages. Very good question, by the way. Regarding the savings bonds, could they be cashed in and put into an ABLE account? We forgot. Yes, that is a very good thing to do. So you have a choice of if your child needs anything, it's considered, SSI calls it a spend down. So if the child needed something or other, then you could buy that. Otherwise, you document it, you have the ABLE account, put the money in there. And that would count in this year towards the $18,000 ABLE account contribution limit.
And that amount typically goes up every year.
It's been going up every year.
Yeah.
The amount has. But also remember, as we said in the beginning, if your child dies unexpectedly, the state can potentially take that money for Medi-Cal, Medicaid use. So there's a,
ABLE account.
yes.
Mm.
So there's a balancing act on how much you want to put in there. And that's my 2 cents on that. There's also some very good online organizations, not unlike the Special Needs Trust Foundation, that specializes in this ABLE account. And I've done some reading on that, and that is, as near as I can determine, very well done.
Well, I think that is our presentation. If anybody has any other questions, now is the time. On the 28th, so 2 Fridays from now, we will be doing this again, but with legal representation on how to set up a special needs trust, how to potentially join the trust of the Special Needs Trust Foundation, your estate planning documents, and all of that. There was a second email invitation that went out with a separate Zoom link for that. You can certainly email me directly if you need that again. And we have a couple more questions here. Please repeat what to Google to see this.
Yes, I'm glad to. So the POMS, just again, so that you know what it means, is Program Operations Manual System. That's the rule book for SSI and Social Security and disability and all that. So you will type in SSA POMS, and then you will type in, for the ABLE account, S as in Sam, I as important, and then we'll leave 1 space, 01130.740. Now this, as I tell everybody, is very slow reading. Even though I've been looking at this stuff for a very long time, I just have to slowly grind through it And it really pays off because every word has been parsed, every word, every comma, everybody's paid attention to this. So it's slow reading. And you have to read it a couple of times, me too. And but you'll find that it's pretty helpful. And they have, I think, very good sections on contributions to the ABLE account, and also how the money's supposed to be spent rather. And make sure you keep receipts for the spending and the income.
The next question is, how is special needs trust different from an ABLE account?
That's a good question. Let me think about that. It's kind of quirky. All these rules are made up. So it's not necessarily logical. If the special needs trust pays food or shelter bills directly to the provider, the check can be reduced up to 300, little over 300 a month. If the ABLE account helps pay food and shelter bills, it doesn't count. It doesn't have to be logical. These are the rules. This is why I encourage everybody to have an ABLE account. You just don't know what's going to happen, or you may not need SSI now, but you may need it later. For example, you might be living at home and your Social Security is $1,200 a month or so. But then something happens and you need to move to a licensed board and care home. So then you can easily have the money from the SSI, and if you need any supplemental money, as long as it comes from the ABLE account, there's no negative effect on the check. Also, if you're going into a board and care, one of the questions is, what is the charge for the board and care? Now, there's two ways to answer this. One, what SSI wants, but they many times don't necessarily ask the question that way. I need to know what the food and the shelter bill is. Well, the food and the shelter bill is typically around 150 less in that range than the board and care payment, which is around 1,500. But what happens is the family will say, oh, the food and shelter bill is actually 2,000 a month because they help my disabled relative monitor their pills and they drive them to the doctor. But the true question is, what's the food and the shelter? The ABLE account, as you saw earlier in the presentation, can be used, for example, to pay for that monitoring of the medicine or helping them bathe, things of that nature.
And the special needs trust can pay the ABLE account, but the special needs trust cannot pay.
Yeah,
food and
it's
shelter.
really quirky. You got to run it
We
through
do
the
that.
ABLE account. And if needed, for example, the special needs trust is important. Let's say there's a lawsuit settlement and the disabled person gets a $300,000 settlement. Well, what the person is allowed to do, or the court is allowed to set it up to say, okay, disabled person gets this $300 settlement. It's being directed to the Special Needs Trust Foundation as a first party trust. And so that could, for all the rules that the first party trust has, that Melissa would be administering, then that money is not counted towards the $2,000 limit. Now, however, if the person passes, that money can be taken to be used to reimburse Medicaid, Medi-Cal. But I think looking at the better thing is how the disabled person is being helped now by having that money, whether or not it might be attached later and it doesn't make a mess of the SSI or other programs that you're receiving.
There's two more questions there. Meredith, could you please type your email? Yes, I will. Main email, I check both, so it really does not matter. Whichever one you prefer to type in. Let's see here, there's another one here, oops, let's see. Beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that this meeting would be recorded, available on your site. Where will that be located? I was okay. Well, we will work on where it will be located on the website. There'll be a link. You have my email, so it'll take a little bit to get it on the website. If you'd like to check back with me in a week or so, a couple weeks, then I can direct you to where it is. But there'll be a link on the website for seminars, and we'll leave it there. And if you have any questions that we can answer at the Special Needs Trust Foundation, you're welcome to call or email. And Dennis so graciously gave his information, just a wealth of knowledge for any more questions that you may have, because he's certainly the expert on everything he talked about. Okay, so if there are, oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Yes. It's our
You're
pleasure.
welcome.
Yeah,
Anytime.
really, thank you, Dennis. This was really, really great. A lot of good information. So I think we'll see if anybody has any remaining questions, and if not, as I said, on June 28th at 10 o'clock, we're going to do the legal portion, and it'll be put on by a couple of experts, special needs trust experts as well, and we can talk about proper estate planning and things like that. Okay. We answered this question. You're very welcome again. And thank you all for joining. Do you have any other?
No, I'd like to thank you all for attending. I apologize for the gravelly throat.
I
And
think we're all going through
again,
it. this
thank you
year.
for attending, and feel free to contact me with any questions, whether they're specific or general. And if you do, we can schedule an appointment. And if you like, sometimes it's very helpful if we're both at a computer, and then we can go to this, either the Social Security website and review some things, or we can go to the POMS, the Program Operations Manual System, and I can show you things there as needed as well.
Okay, great. So I think I will end this for everybody. And okay, thank you all again for coming.
Thank you.